Hello, and welcome to Taking Care of Your Mental Health Over the Holidays, brought to you by Eskenazi Health. I'm Tina Cosby with the Indianapolis stations of Radio 1. Our guest this segment is Dr. Heather Fretwell, MD. She is a psychiatrist with the Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center. Let's bring her in. Dr. Fretwell, welcome. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about mental health, the holidays, and a lot of things. And I think it's a conversation that's appropriate any time of the year. But around the holidays, it takes on special meaning, does it not?
It does.
Yeah. Yeah. I would assume because of just expectations and things of that nature. First, you are with Sandra Eskenazi. We're going to get into more of that as well. We're going to get into a whole lot of things as our discussion unwinds. But can you share with everyone what it is that you do?
Well, I've been with Sandra Eskenazi now for 16 years. And I'm most of that time been a clinical outpatient psychiatrist. I still do clinical outpatient work. Over time, I've added to what I do administratively, and I'm very proud to say I'm the chief medical officer for Sandra Eskenazi, and I support the mission of our inpatient and outpatient programs as one of the largest community mental health centers in the state of Indiana. We just celebrated our 52nd anniversary.
Oh, well, congratulations on your anniversary, and I'm talking to the big boss. So, hey, let me make sure my questions are correct. So, we don't want to be talking over anyone's heads. That's not the point. We want to make sure that everyone understands what it is that we're talking about. So, doctor, can you explain exactly what SAD or seasonal affective disorder is?
Absolutely. So seasonal affective disorder. So I'm going to start out by saying I grew up on a farm from Indiana in Marion, actually, and I kind of grew up to be a psychiatrist. So I'm just going to talk a little bit of country sense here. All right.
Okay. That's good.
So seasonal affective disorder is that as we enter less light and more darkness, our bodies try to hibernate. But because we're not actually hibernatory animals like bears and skunks and rabbits, we do it very badly. And so it comes out in the form of extreme fatigue, problems with focus, just wanting to sleep all the time, carbohydrate cravings.
Really?
Yeah, pasta, chips, mashed potatoes, macaroni, all these things, yes.
All the good things.
All the good things, right? And so we're trying to kind of eat in the things that are not necessarily the most healthy for us, where our energy is crashing, our focus is crashing, we just feel less interested in things, and we have about a 5% incidence at our latitude. If you track seasonal affective disorder by latitude, you'll find you get it less when you go south, like Florida.
I was going to ask that,
incidence, and like Alaska and Iceland have like a 10% incidence.
Wow. So where you live, geographically makes a big difference in terms of how not only you get it, I guess, or you would be more exposed to it, but also how you process it when it does come up, right?
Absolutely. And this is why actually full spectrum lights are actually a very highly evidence-based treatment for seasonal affective disorder. So these are lamps that you have to put like kind of within your field of vision for about an hour, and they output pretty close to the visual spectrum of the sun, and they exclude a few of the more harmful ultraviolet spectrums, so you don't have to worry about getting a sunburn when you're sitting in front of one. But I call it medicine for the back of your eyeballs. Because what's going on is that we have fibers at the back of our eyes that aren't involved necessarily with sight, but they're involved with like seasonal kinds of changes and activity and wakefulness and day-night cycles and that sort of fun stuff. And so these full spectrum lights, there's actually a brand. If I can I mention the brand?
Okay, Happy Lamp.
Name is called Happy Lamp. And it's one of the more affordable options. They've been around for a couple of decades, but they used to be prohibitively expensive. But now you can get one for $30 or $40 at major retailers.
And how do you use it again? You just put it, where do you put it?
So you kind of put it within your field of vision, basically where you would spend about an hour in the mornings. And interestingly enough, you really don't want to do more than an hour. Like I've had some folks decide, if an hour is good, 5 hours is great, right? No, this is actually the kind of light you can overdose on. Just like
Oh
too
my
much
goodness.
insulin is not a good thing.
You don't want to have to go to the ER with an OD of the happy light. How would you treat that?
Well,
So who is more prone to um, SAD? Who is more prone to seasonal affective disorder? Is there a group, a male, female, young? Who would be more likely to
middle
fall?
aged, it tends to be a little bit more female, and it tends to be a little bit more people with actually other kinds of mental health conditions. Like if you've currently or previously had um, depression or an anxiety disorder or other kinds of mental health concerns, you can be a little bit more prone to have this kind of on top of everything else. And so, kind of, I have a lot of folks that have what I would consider kind of more straightforward major depression, but then they have this extra seasonal component on
Yes,
top of
yeah,
it.
yeah.
So
So how do you know that you're getting what are the signs? What are the symptoms? And you gave us one of the treatments, the happy lamp, but maybe some things if you don't have it, you can do around other than move maybe to Florida. Before so, is that I've heard people say I'm moving. I can't take this winter here in Indiana. It's too depressing. But what are the signs and symptoms? Yeah.
so it's having a low mood, depressed mood for 2 or more weeks, not enjoying the things that you would typically enjoy, finding yourself laughing less, find yourself looking less forward to activities, feeling less enthused about things. Sometimes people get, that what they really notice, what people around them notice, is marked irritability. So those mood shifts can be a symptom. Um, Sleep differences. Now, most people with SAD are going to have hypersomnia, or they're going to sleep extra hours, like 10, 12, 14 hours. But some people have insomnia or some combination of the two, like going back and forth. So their sleep gets dysregulated. Lots of times, again, their appetite changes, usually increases, but in some people, again, it's different, and their appetite might decrease because they just get less interested in it, along with other things. Crying spells, lethargy, problems with concentration, feeling weirdly guilty, or being obsessed with feelings of guilt or hopelessness or helplessness. Those are some of the more serious potential symptoms. Frequent crying spells, and even thoughts about wanting to no longer be alive or having suicidal thoughts can even be a part of this syndrome.
So what's a surefire symptom of SAD? I mean, there are a lot of conditions that we talk about every day, and usually most conditions have, if you have this, we're pretty sure that you have that. So is there any particular identifier, one or even two identifiers of SAD, or is it a combination, a compilation?
It's got a lot of overlap with other conditions, but for the typical person, SAD starts in September or October. And so it doesn't necessarily wait to start till later on, although for some people it does. So the unfortunate thing is that there's a really fancy word for what you're talking about, which is pathognomonic. Very fancy word that means if you have this one symptom, then you automatically have this disease. And there's very few syndromes, and especially in mental health, that have like one symptom equals this
Yeah.
problem.
So you just have to be sensitive to it, be aware of it, be aware of where we are on the calendar, be aware that you live in Indiana. If you live here in Indianapolis, Marion County, or anywhere within the state of Indiana that has four seasons, as opposed to some areas that don't have but maybe one. I
Right.
Let me ask you. I've always wondered about this. Places that have constant sunshine, and a steady temperature year round, just paradise all the time. Is there anything that is associated with that? Can that be depressing? Sounds awfully good. It's just,
It does, doesn't it?
yeah,
Um,
it does.
Yeah, I'm actually not aware of any studies showing
Yeah,
an
yeah.
excess of, or a higher risk of
Uh huh.
conditions at, those nice mediate latitudes,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of like just above and below the equator. Hmm.
Right, right, right. So let's talk about, okay. We know what the signs and the symptoms are. We know somewhat. I like the happy lamp. I love that, and I love that you cannot cannot go more than an hour because you can OD on the happy lamp, because
It can induce
that's
mania.
very important for people to know. Folks do tend to go a little overboard. Speaking of overboard, and before we get into and we're talking about managing your stress next, how we manage it. Okay, I'm in a store, a retail store, right? In August. I
Hmm.
look up and I see that retailer has a display of Christmas
Hmm.
items, wrapping paper, ribbons, all kinds of just a Christmas display. And it's August. And so I'm trying to find a gift for, a niece for their August birthday before they go back to school. And I'm thinking, so that stressed me out. And I'm not kidding. It stressed me out. And
I
I had
get
to
it.
stop. I had to stop and I had to talk to myself and I had to think, where is it going to end? Because are we going to just skip over the 4th of July now for Christmas? So those are all the things that were going through my mind and stressing me out. So I got over it, and I just like, went, okay, okay. But can those type of things be a real stressor for people who are prone to have that anyway? Like thinking, oh, I only have until it's already August and I'm late. Because that, in a lot of ways, you can process that so many ways. I processed it as greedy retailers trying to get, pad their Black Fridays. I don't know. I don't know what I was, but anyway, I processed it that way. But
So a truism, I think, for advertising is that the whole point of almost all advertisement is to induce anxiety in the consumer,
oh,
and then to say, "Oh, but my products can fix your anxiety."
ah, so get my products now, and you won't
Hmm.
be anxious closer to the time, and you'll be able to find everything. So
Yes,
it's
but
easy. Well, there you go.
and they do a great job of inducing anxiety.
So what are your thoughts on, how people should look at walking in a store in the month of August and seeing Christmas displays?
So this can be a great place for internal boundaries, and it really depends a bit too on your temperament, because I know a number of folks that they'll buy gifts throughout the year for Christmas, and by October comes, they're already done. I admire these people greatly for a variety of reasons. Most of us aren't built that way, you know. And so, if you need further separation now from your holiday, starting in August, I think Christmas is not for 5 months yet. I've got my issues today. I think there's a biblical verse that says, "Sufficient unto the day are the problems thereof." you know, so we just kind of focus on, okay, I'm here for this reason. This is, the problem I was solving today. This is what I was coming to the store for. Okay, yes, Christmas is coming. We know. um, and say, okay, but that's going to have to wait till later.
Yeah. Yeah. So exactly. Prioritize, list it, whatever. Even though they're trying to push you, you push back. To me, I push back. I'm like, I'm not thinking about you until, way later. So it's there. So a lot of, here's where a lot of people get caught up in anxiety as well, because they're told over and over it's the most wonderful time of year. We're all supposed to be happy and loving, and the fuzzy warm commercials and things of that nature. And there are people that simply don't always feel that.
Hmm.
That's
And And this
stressful.
is a place where, American consumerism, the media, the commercials, again, they're to provoke anxiety and say this is how you solve it. Um, they do a big disservice to a lot of folks because, the departure from reality can be pretty significant. I mean, there's folks that, you know, maybe they've lost family members, maybe they have seasonal affective disorder, maybe they have depression, maybe it's an anniversary date of loss or some other kind of trauma. Um, maybe people they were close to moved across the country, or maybe they moved across the country away from family because of opportunities or other major kinds of life decisions. And so, it's very difficult to make yourself feel any kind of which way. But we have this expectation from these kinds of images and media that we're supposed to be able to do that. And so it just really even wraps in, we feel even more like a failure because I'm supposed to be happy. All this is telling me I'm supposed to be able to even make myself happy and I'm not doing it. So what is even extra wrong with me? And it's just really unfortunate because feelings are things that we can never directly control. We can influence what we say, what we do, how we interact with people, how we treat ourselves, including self care, including if as necessary, going to our doctors or therapists or ministers or groups or any of the different kinds of things that are helpful to us matter and do affect how we feel. But nobody can turn their own feelings on and off like a light switch.
Yeah. So what are the remedies for that? I mean, and you talked about self-care, and we hear a lot about that. Can we go into that a little more? I mean, maybe if we're feeling like I'm not feeling it, is there something in the area of self-care that we can do to kind of help us? I mean, I don't know. You're the doctor. You tell me. Is there something that we can do in that area that would make us feel better, possibly?
And again, we can affect our feelings by doing certain things. Like, if you think about, um, a TV show that makes you laugh, that maybe watch an episode of that. Be careful too how much you're committing to, because I think that's the other major danger of the holidays is that we can get really stretched thin in a society where we tend to run a little ragged, right? you know, um, and so it can be an opportunity for us to get even stretched more thin and to disrupt, what self care activities and routines that we have. And so I think we need to release the pressure on us and think like, we don't have to do it all, or we can try to strategically break things down more in stages. And that might mean strategically starting a little earlier in your planning for Christmas this year than last year. Might not need to be August, but maybe a
Sure,
little
it
earlier
does.
breaking
Yeah,
it
sure it does. Yeah.
up.
So
Right.
yeah, yeah. So how can we best expect ourselves to manage expectations? Because another part of the stress is just the expectation of the joy. Even if you're not feeling it, you're expecting it to come at any point. How can we manage and not only that, not necessarily the joy, but expectations? Well, how many gifts do I have? How much money do I have for this? How many people are coming over for this event? What about the company Christmas part? What about my budget? I'm not sure I'm going to have enough money. Should I borrow? Should I charge? Should I pay all cash? All of these things run through your mind. And I've only got so much time because I didn't start in August. So we're going to keep back to the August thing. But all of those things get wrapped up into a ball as well. And you can find yourself just sitting in the middle of the floor going, oh my goodness, how are we going to get through Christmas this year?
Absolutely. And again, so sometimes you're just going to have to very compassionately to yourself and others and say, not this part. So you might not get cards out to everybody this year, right? You might not get big presents for everybody. You might get, you know, something small, or you might talk to your friends and family and say, this was a really rough year for me. And I think I would love to spend time with you. And can bring a side dish, but I'm just not going to be able to participate in these big things, and just kind of acknowledging, our human limitations and trying to treat them with compassion.
So what are your thoughts on somewhat changing traditions to make them less stressful? And that's something that I've talked to some other friends about their families, because so many things were so complex, and they said, let's make it simple, isn't it? And there was pushback, but they stayed with it and said, why, let's just try it for just 1 year, and then if it doesn't work, we can go back. What about ideas like that, like maybe changing traditions? Everything doesn't have to be exactly as it has been in years past.
Absolutely. I mean, our own family, we would make like lasagna every year for Christmas. That was one of our things for that one part of the family. And it got to be kind of a big deal because there's like 20 of us. And so eventually one year we decided we're just going to buy Stofers. We're going to let them cook. you
That
know?
is so funny. That is so funny because we just had Stouffer's last night. And my daughter, I was late from work, and my daughter was saying that she saw on TikTok a video of this little girl. We're getting way off base here, but I got to tell
Mm.
a video of a little girl who used to brag about her mother's homemade lasagna. And one day she saw, when she was a little older, she saw her mother, emptying the Stouffer's box. And she said, Stouffer's? Stouffer's? She was traumatized. She said, oh, my life, I thought my mother was making homemade lasagna and it was Stouffer's. So it was, so she was laughing. My daughter was laughing last night when we opened up the Stouffer's, and I said, "Hey, Stouffer's is good. It works in a pinch."
It
So
does, and then it really, keeps a burden off of whoever is preparing it, and there's other stories, like going to cookie exchanges, which are very fun, very sugary kinds of things, and if you end up going to Kroger's and buying a package of cookies, show up with that. Don't miss out. Don't feel like you have to, spend hours in the kitchen when you don't have time for it.
and take care of yourself too. Don't get so run down that you look like the holidays have run you down. And how many? We all know that person too, right? That just kind of sits in the corner of the family after everything is after we've all arrived, and they're exhausted. They look exhausted. They look like Christmas has beat them up.
Right. I mean, none of us want that for our family members. And so, and that's the other thing too, is like, where everybody's coming to a gathering. If everybody does a little bit and try to just kind of be conscientious that things don't fall on the shoulders of who is always fallen upon, right? Because there can be a lot of family traditions where, these three people are the ones that are the cooks. And then they also tend to do all the cleanup. Step up, because the years have might have changed people. People might have more back pain than they used to, and they would relish the opportunity for somebody to stand up and do some of the prep work so they could sit down for a little bit, and pass on those traditions and how everything is done, and then step up and help with the cleanup. And even if you hadn't thought about it before, try to share the responsibilities of everything that's going on.
And so I'm hearing in between some of the conversation that it's okay to say no in a healthy way. Can you give some folks a little bit more reinforcement about how to do that? Because I'm hearing you say it is okay to say no. How do we do it?
Right. So, for example, the week before Christmas, you might have a church, midnight mass scheduled that week. A few days before, you might have a
Mhm.
family early Christmas gathering, or you might have a work related party. Um, you might have a section of the family say, "Hey, I'll be in town doing shopping the prior weekend. Can we all get together?" And just really pull out your calendar, count the hours in the day, and think, do I have the emotional, mental, physical resources to do this? And there might be things that you can go to, but you might leave early, or you might arrive late. Or you might say, "I'm so sorry, not this year." And how can we see each other again another time? Kind of, and even kind of spread things out a little bit.
Yeah. So it can be a happy time. It doesn't have to be stressful and it doesn't have to be sad. It can be happy. And it sounds like what you're saying is if we manage expectations and plan ahead and understand that it's okay to say no, I guess.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people inadvertently pile a lot of guilt on themselves for not being able to do everything.
Yeah.
And so this is a place where we're like, hey, we're human. We're built to have only so much capacity. And when we don't acknowledge those capacities, we can run into trouble. And the more years that we have this experience in this human life, maybe the more patterns that we're identifying, and the more we learn about one, figuring out when to ask for help, and two, being willing to ask for help, and three, accepting the help when it's offered. Because these are all separate steps, and we can get picked up, we can get hitched up on each one of them.
And so how would we do that as we come to a close here? What are the resources that are available right now? I know Sandra Eskenazi Health. You all are tremendously resourced. So can you share those with people who may be watching right now?
Absolutely. So you can actually talk about mental health concerns with any doctor, even a specialist, even if they're not, feeling like they can actively treat that condition, they can point you in a good direction. Primary care is a great place to start. If what's going on with you is more intensive, it's really starting to affect your daily life in a lot more way. You can Google your zip code and community mental health center, and you will find all the community mental health centers across Indiana. And then Sandra Eskenazi, we really specialize in Marion County, but we do accept patients from other counties as well. And you can find us online, and you can find Eskenazi Health at Eskenazi Care Connect phone number, which you can find online.
And if you feel the crisis line is always available, 988. What are your thoughts on that? 988.
988 has been a really great resource. It's still new. We just got it in July, but I think it's so fantastic that you just have these three numbers now to remember if you're feeling in crisis, and you don't have to wait until the crisis is way up here to call. You can call when it's still kind of simmering before it comes to the full blown boil. The earlier you reach out, the better, faster the results are going to be for you, the faster that you're going to be able to access the help, and the more that potential will be able to head off to keep things from getting any worse. And sometimes, it's just helpful to know where to go for encouragement, to have that listening ear for a while so you can say, okay, all right, I'm going to simplify my holiday and I'm ready to go forth and do my best to enjoy what I can. If there's other feelings that come up, I can feel them, I can honor them, and share them with the other people that are close to me.
And in this instance, retail therapy needs to be kept in its place around Christmas.
Indeed.
Indeed. A lot of people go to that, and I think that is helpful in some regards. But in this instance, let's keep that, I would assume, to keep it in its place, in its proper perspective.
Yeah, just be mindful, and the person that you're buying a gift for may not need the most expensive thing. It may be a lot more what's meaningful, and sometimes much smaller things than we imagine can feel very meaningful to a recipient.
You heard the story. People may not remember every gift they've ever gotten for Christmas, but they have Christmas memories that last forever. And in a lot of ways, that's what the holiday, all of the holidays are about, is creating warm memories, family and friends, and doing the best we can with that, and not necessarily focusing on the gift buying. That's what you remember. Dr. Fretwell, any closing thoughts before we have to end things here? Do you have any final thoughts you want to share with everyone before we have to go?
Absolutely. Make sure to take care of yourself. You count too in the middle of all of this. And your health and well-being is very important in the midst of all the rest of the season. Accept that we all have limits. Make good strategic planning. Talk to your friends and family members about what you're doing. Don't expect them to read your mind. Have these conversations, and treat yourself and others with compassion. And look for sometimes even the smallest things are what can really lend joy to the season.
Thank you very much. Dr. Heather Fretwell, psychiatrist with the Sandra Eskenazi Mental Health Center, the chief medical officer at the Sandra Eskenazi Medical Health Center. I want to thank you all for joining us, for taking care of your mental health over the holidays, brought to you by Eskenazi Health. Please do take care of your mental health, and thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.